Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I'm Ashdin, Doctor, your habit coach, and today we have a very interesting guest. Now, this guest has completed 100 podcast episodes. Now, most people, when they go to start a podcast, they think about, I'm going to be able to do 20 episodes, 5 episodes. And most people who started a podcast, especially during the lockdown, ended the podcast because they couldn't think of topics beyond a point. They couldn't continue with that consistency. And on the Habit Coach podcast, we only talk about consistency, correct? And what makes our guest really special is that he's only 11 years old. So join me in welcoming our guest on the Habit Coach podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Tell everybody your name and tell them what it is that you actually do.
Hello, everybody. My name is Samarth Chitta. I am 11 years old and I'm in grade 5. So I run a podcast called Kidacity. It's a weekly show where I talk about different things that kids my age will like, and kids my age actually, they show interest in. So I'm nearing 100 episodes soon.
Amazing. 100 episodes. How do you feel thinking about 100 episodes that you've done?
I think that it actually, the whole podcast journey was amazing, and hitting 100 episodes is quite incredible.
So tell me something. Why did you start this podcast? What was the first thought that happened in your mind when you started thinking about this podcast?
So I actually started in the lockdown 2020 in March, just as the lockdown started and COVID was everywhere. So I was sitting at home. My parents were listening to podcasts and I also was listening with them. While they were listening, I was in the room, and then I thought that podcast as a whole topic, as a whole genre in a way, it's a very interesting thing. So I was immediately hooked, and then my parents helped me, start my own podcast. And I did it for fun. And before that, I had a YouTube channel, which I still do have. So there, each day, I had 3 good news that was relevant to that day. And then at first, I converted that into the podcast. So each week, I had 3 different good news that happened that week. And then some places that you can visit, or some things that you can do online actually, because no one can go outside their houses at that time. So after that, slowly, I really enjoyed podcasting. So I just immediately, every week, I uploaded episodes, and then it kept transitioning my podcast.
What is it that keeps you consistent at it? 100 episodes is a lot. Correct? So how do you stay consistent at doing it without fail for each of these?
So actually, sometimes I forget. So my parents, especially my mom, she reminds me a lot. But in terms of that, I put out some time each week for my podcast. Otherwise, I have these sports classes, the swimming, basketball. And then I also...
Yeah, kids your age are absolutely busy doing lots of things, right? When I look at my friends' kids, and they're constantly busy. They're busier than most of us are.
Yeah.
Between work and school, and not work, but school and tuitions and all of that. It's crazy.
Yeah. So then I also play with my friends. So I'm I have to have some time that I can do my podcast. So I put out some time on a weekday, which is generally Thursdays. So then I write my script. And on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, I record my podcast, and my mom helps me edit. I'm learning to edit now. So then it goes live by Monday or Tuesday at max.
So you are recording, and now you're starting to edit your own episodes as well.
Yes.
What is it about editing that you don't like?
So I think the editing software, it's actually quite simple to use. But then, cutting out all of that. But then on top of that, there are when I'm doing the recording, I do these breaths I hold for some time, and then it's weird when it comes in the podcast. So removing those little bits is really hard and really annoying.
Yeah, because we don't realize this, especially as listeners, the amount of editing that goes into into your podcast, because there's so many purrs, furfurs, all these kinds of noises that come out from our mouth that the engineers have to go and start removing these things from it. When you started this podcast, right, did you think that you would actually reach 100 episodes, or it was something that you did for fun? What was the...
So I started it for fun because, I was stuck at home for a long time. I had nothing to do, no classes. So then I was like, maybe after lockdown, I'll stop, and then because I'd have school again and all of that. But then what I realized was that actually it was quite a good thing, and I really enjoyed it. So I was like, actually, yeah, let's continue. And now I'm at 100 episodes.
What is the podcast doing for you?
So it's teaching me actually a lot of things about the topics, because I'm researching a lot, and then I'm learning new things.
You're doing all your research yourself?
Yes. So like, for example, episode 99, it's about Trinidad and Tobago. And then there, I found out that the world's spiciest chili pepper comes from there. And the world's finest quality cacao comes from Trinidad and Tobago too. So I was like, this is really interesting. So I'm learning a lot about those topics that I'm researching about.
So why did you decide to do something on Trinidad and Tobago?
So nowadays, I realized that actually a lot of my friends and a lot of my listeners, their favorite segment was One Country, 10 Amazing Things, which is my travel segment. So I decided to completely incorporate that into my podcast.
Nice.
So I was like, each episode we'd have one country or one place, and then we'd have 5 segments about the history, the culture, the cuisine, and about the geography and some facts, and most importantly, one problem or one thing that the citizens or the children there, a problem that they're facing, and how we can also take initiative about that. So each week I put a change.org petition from that country. So like in Trinidad and Tobago, there is unequal education for unvaccinated children. So I thought that, that was really unfair to the children.
Which kind of vaccination?
The COVID vaccination. So then I thought it was really unfair. So I was like, we should raise awareness about this.
Interesting. This will be your hamniyat country?
So I have, before this, I think it's like 20th, 21st.
21st country.
Like in the 20s. And I also did 10 plus interviews about the people from each of the countries.
You interviewed people from those countries?
Yes.
So you actually reached out to them.
Yeah.
You found somebody who's a specialization in that country.
Yes. And also actually mostly people who live in that country or are citizens. Because my dad, he had friends from all around the world. So he helped me connect. So I did Canada, Philippines, Russia. So a lot of these countries.
And what do you typically talk to all these guests about?
So how life is in that country. And after that, I realized how much it varies from India, how much it varies from the other people that I've talked to. And I also talked to about the problems that they face as well there.
So out of all of them, which was the most interesting interview that really like, oh my God, I had no idea this was going on in this country?
So actually, I think one of my favorite interviews, most interesting, was about Canada.
Okay.
So
why? Canada is just like very plain vanilla.
Yeah, Canada's quite plain, I think, but it was really interesting. I found out about quite a bunch of stuff, but now I can't recollect. But
you found that episode really interesting.
Yes, because also the person, my dad's friend, his kid, also came onto the podcast along with him. So then I also asked him a lot of questions, and I found out how life as a kid in Canada is like so much more different than India.
So you have episodes that are around different countries.
Yes.
Then you have episodes around different books that you're reading and
Yes.
reviewing these books. So firstly, tell people about how did you get into the habit of reading?
So I love to read. I love to write. So that's why in the beginning, when I was in grade 1 or grade 2, I had this constant habit of reading a lot of books. And I had the constant habit of writing a lot. So my teacher said, homework, write 1 page about this, something. I wrote like 4 or 5 pages because I just enjoyed writing about that. I just enjoyed writing in general. And because of writing, or because of reading, actually, because of writing, yeah, I developed a habit of reading as well. And I saw all these...
So writing got you to start reading as well?
Yeah, I think it's like a little like mix. So reading, I read a lot, and I used to also. So then that's why I was like, I should start writing as well. And then I also wrote, and then that expanded my horizon of what to read. So they're like mixed. And reading, I read all these books like Roald Dahl, J.K. Rowling, Enid Blyton. So I realized that, there was so many different perspectives when an author writes. And I realized that it's quite amazing how they get the characters to life, how the places, they just feel real. And that's what also inspired me to write.
When you sleep, do you dream about these situations and places and all of them? These characters come alive, right? That's the beauty of books.
Sometimes I'm like stuck and there's a monster chasing after me. The BFG's chasing after me.
Tell me, these are primarily fiction books. Do you read
Yes.
non-fiction books also? Do you read self-help books also?
Yes, so in the beginning, actually, I'm completely addicted to fiction books. It's my favorite genre. And each year we have to take a reading goal as well in our school. And my teacher noticed that I was reading primarily fiction books, only maybe. And she told me, you should read more non-fiction. And that got me to the habit. I have a lot of non-fiction books, but I've never actually opened them and started reading them. But after that, I, read more about non-fiction. And then I realized that it was also quite an interesting genre. And it taught a lot about the real world. And because I love countries, I love to travel as well. I have all these different books about different countries, especially about Japan. I have 20 books. They're like The Art of Ikigai, Wabi Sabi, all these different Japanese aspects, elements, and arts.
This is so interesting. We're going to talk about your Japanese obsession for sure. He's wearing a Japanese t-shirt right now as well while we're having this conversation. But coming back to reading, right? Tell me, what is your reading habit? When do you start reading? Do you have a fixed place where you read? What is the way that you do your reading?
My reading, actually, I do it anywhere in my house but I enjoy these small nooks and crannies because they just feel very cozy. And
you have a particular chair that you have that is your reading place?
Yeah, I have this chair and then I put my legs up on the poof and then I just read for a long of time. And now we got a hammock recently, and then on Sundays I just sleep on the hammock, pick up a book, and then I'm just swinging and I'm reading the book, and I finish 75% of the book.
Wow.
And then I'm like, oh my god, I have a class, so I have to go now.
So you read for large chunks of time?
Yes, and sometimes because
half an hour, 1 hour, how much?
1 hour, half an hour, yeah. Because
3 hours, 4 hours?
Sometimes 1.5 hours, but generally these days I have other things as well, and I'm reading books throughout the day, but at short periods of time, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, in the morning on the bus, and then in the afternoon before I play, and then in the night when I'm sleeping. So then I'm balancing out the reading across the day.
So through the day, little, it's almost like snacking that you're doing with your book. You're eating a little, reading a little through it.
Yeah.
Now tell me, when you're reading, and so I've just launched my book as well, so it's right behind you. It came out in Feb. And somebody told me, Ashdin, you're stupid. Why did you write a book? Because nobody reads anymore. Right? And I was very upset. I was like, what do you mean by nobody reads anymore? So we started this whole thing on how to make reading a habit again. So we started doing workshops for book clubs, etc., for how to make reading a habit. What would be your top 3 habits for reading for people who've never picked up books, have never started reading? Why should they do it? And then what are 3 habits?
Okay. I've noticed that people who haven't read books a lot, they watch movies though, a bunch of them, or a TV series. So what I recommended first, just look at the books, because most of the movies have been originated from the original books, even though you may not know it. So Harry Potter,
Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, all those came from books.
Yes. So Harry Potter, it's really popular in the movie. A lot of my friends have watched it, but not as many have actually read the series. So I'd suggest that you should read the books you should read the books of the original of the movies that you watched. So then you'll understand the beauty of books. And my second point, or my second, what do you call this? My second tip is that you should read genres that interest you. And let's say a lot of people, they like to read, they like planes. A lot of my friends, including me, I like aviation.
Absolutely, me too.
Yeah. So read maybe non-fiction books about planes, about aviation, and then you'll also understand, you'd maybe understand a lot more. And
Like my father, one of his favorite genre when he was growing up in school was World War II fighters, right?
Oh.
So World War II fighting aces and pilots, and it was all about that because he enjoyed planes, and then he enjoyed that entire genre of World War II and all of that. So that was one interesting thing. Maybe that's something that people can think about. Absolutely. Tip number 3.
Tip number 3. My third tip is that you should also just find small amounts of time when you're doing nothing and try picking up a book and read it. And if you like it, continue reading it. And just look at the blurb maybe in the library. Go to your library in the school, in your class, or the one in the public library near you. Just read the blurbs, spend some time, and try and understand which kind of books and get a sense of which kind of books you'd like maybe.
Interesting. What are the blurbs? The blurbs are the things at the
back of the book.
Right. So you always read the back as well. So do you have a set way of choosing a book? When you go to a bookshop, how do you choose a book?
So my first priority is, if I'm reading a series, pick the next book of the series so I can finish that series. But I also look for new books from my favorite author. Like Sudha Murty, when she released her Gopi Diaries book, I had already read her The Magic Jam, all her stories. So I was like, I like Sudha Murty. She's one of my favorite authors. Why not also see the Gopi Diaries, what it's about? And then I read the book, and then I also enjoyed it. So when I go to the bookstore, I see what are the new books in each of the genres, what are the new books in fiction, non-fiction, and which one of them interests me. And then I'll pick out, I haven't tried this author yet, I haven't tried this series yet, I haven't tried this genre yet even. So I'm like, let's try.
So one of my favorite tips is always read the blurb, like you said.
Yes.
And then go through the table of contents. So what is the index? Go through the index so you know what kind of chapters are there, what's happening next, especially for non-fiction books.
Yes.
Right? Fiction books, you'll have strange titles, but non-fiction books will at least tell you what you will learn or what you will pick up through the book. So that is another way of looking at it. You do book reviews.
Yes.
What does your reviews sound like? This is good, this is bad, or like you go into like the depth of character formation and things like that? How do you review your books?
I think it would be in the middle. I don't go exactly a lot into depth. So my main priority is like talk about these 4 or 5 things that I've already decided. One, the language genre and the length of the book. So to give a basic overview. 2 is a 2-part. It's about the book, short summary, and then about the author who has written the book and short summary about them. My 3rd part is why I recommend this book to people like me, to people who are my age. And my 4th part is a rating out of 5 out of 10.
Okay, so out of 5 or out of 10, both have a very different meaning.
Oh yeah, out of 5.
Out of 5.
Yeah.
So the rating at the end of how you think about the book. Also, I think it's important what kind of people will enjoy this kind of book, right? Like what kind of bent of mindset comes from this. So you love reading. Yes. You love writing. You've written how many books? You've written a couple.
Yes, I've written 2 and I'm working on my 3rd book now.
You already started writing your 3rd book?
Well, not started. It's about the Indian Army and lessons that we, the children, can learn from, the people in the army and the whole organization.
Fictional or non-fictional?
It's non-fiction. So in that book, it will be split into chapters, different lessons. So far, I have interviewed quite a few people, including the COAS, the Chief of Army Staff, and asked them about the same questions throughout to see what kind of different opinions are going to be there and what kind of similar opinions are going to be clashing and are going to be, then I realized actually that a lot of people said that time is very important and that you have to be on time anywhere you go. You can't give any excuses. You can't be like, oh no, my car broke down. And even if someone dies on the way, you're like, no excuses.
So time was something that you picked up as
Yes.
a very important aspect for the armed forces.
Yes.
You have very graciously gifted me a book of yours.
Yes.
Tell us about the book. What is the title? What is it? I'm going to hold it up for people who are watching it on YouTube. But people who are just listening to the podcast, well, you should be checking it out on YouTube as well. All right, tell me about the book. Konnichiwa Izumi.
Yes. So it is titled Konnichiwa Izumi, Adventures in 2040.
Mm-hmm.
So
2040.
yes.
All right.
Very much in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And in this book, it's set in Japan.
So when it's 2040, how old will you be?
Now I'm 11, 23, so 18, 28.
28. Okay, fine. So you'll be still fairly
Yeah.
in the thick of it at that point of time.
Yeah.
All right, lovely.
So the main summary of this book is the main character Izumi
Mm-hmm.
and his dog Akira. They go on adventures across Japan, across Tokyo mainly, and each time they face a different problem in each of the chapters. That some of them are in the future, some of them still are happening around us now, and they're just escalated. So an example is the first chapter. It's titled one second. It's titled Izumi and Ichitron.
Mm-hmm.
So Ichitron is the name of the robot who wants to take over Tokyo.
Oh, he's taking over Tokyo.
Yes.
All right.
Spoiler alert.
Mm. But does he take over Tokyo in the first couple of chapters, or is it?
So each chapter has its own story. So
Okay.
You'll find out what happens in the end of the chapter.
It's the year 2040 in Tokyo, Japan, the robot capital of the world. I love the starting line of the chapter. There are robots everywhere. Subway trains look like high-speed bullet trains, super fast. A flight to Singapore from New York, the longest plane route in the world, takes just 5 hours. The world's population is about 14 billion, and India is the country with the largest population. 24-year-old Izumi. You're going to be 24 at that point of time. Is this the same?
No, I'm not Izumi.
Okay, you're not Izumi. Okay, fine.
Izumi is, now he'd be 7.
7. So 24-year-old Izumi lives alone and works for a robot company near Tokyo Bay. Lovely. So I love the way that it started. Straight into it, you're describing what the current scenario is going to be. Who taught you to write like this?
So I'd also took these online courses. There was this Tinkle course,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned a lot from it. I also took the Scholastic Writers Academy course, and then the book just came out like a week ago. And so technically I'm on my 2.5 book because I've written that book with a lot of other authors. Each of them is a story that we have imagined, and we have gotten help from our mentor.
Tell me, when you were writing this book, what was the process for writing it? Do you have a structure? Do you have a habit of how you're going to write?
When I was writing this book, it was COVID. It was still lockdown, but it was 2021. So I had much more time on my hands. And each day after school, I would write very little to get an understanding and to at least have a little progress. And by the time the weekends came, I used to write more. But the original start for
What
this
is
book...
your definition of very little, firstly?
Very little is
You said instead of 1 page, I used to send 4 pages in to my teacher. So that is not very little. I used to send half a page if the teacher told me 1 page. So what is your definition of very little?
Very little,
4,000 words or something.
No, 1 paragraph.
Okay.
1 paragraph, 2 paragraph, 1 page, maybe. But I actually originally started writing this for my podcast. And each week I would have this story about Izumi, and they'd all be combined. And after that, I thought, this would also make a great book. So I combined all of them together and added 1 or 2 more chapters. And there it is. Konnichiwa Izumi was then made.
Fantastic. Have you been to Izumi in Bombay? Have you been to the restaurant?
Oh yeah, actually, we were going out yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We were staying in Bandra, And my dad sent, he was like, should we go to Izumi? I was like, sure, maybe. But then we ended up going to the Farmhouse, the Farmer's Cafe.
Farmhouse Cafe.
Yeah.
That's where I just had lunch from. But you must go to Izumi. Absolutely fantastic food.
Yes.
Best of the Japanese food that is there around here. So please do check it out.
Okay.
Now tell me, where did your obsession for Japan start? Why Japan?
Well, when I was 3 years old,
Mm-hmm.
I won't say very young, because you said...
Thank you.
Because you said I'm still young.
Yeah, we just started. Oh, when I was very young. How young? You're still young. What are you talking about? No, when I was 3. Acha, 3 is very young. 11 is okay. Fine. 7 is what I mistaken your age for. 7 is middle.
Yeah,
not very
7's
young.
middle.
7 I was okay. All right. Coming back. You were 3 years old.
I was 3 years old, and, I was in my grandmom's house. And there on the cable TV, Doraemon used to come 24/7. All the time. It used to be on Disney Channel. So I'd be sitting in front of the TV and I'd be watching Doraemon. And by the time I already knew I knew like 2 or 3 episodes by heart. I knew exactly what happened. Because they kept playing on loop.
Right.
But then I didn't mind. I was like, why not watch it again? It's interesting. And then when I was watching, I realized that, Japan as a whole, it didn't exactly depict Japan like quite thoroughly, but then I still got really fascinated. Like they had the dorayaki,
Mm-hmm.
or like Doraemon says, Dora cakes, and I was like, this is such a cool, thing, and all the markets, all of the city, and I was like, this is really cool, and that's why I was instantly hooked. And at that time, I started watching Shinchan as well, and after that, in online school. Now, when I had more access to computers because I had to have one to do my classes. So I was then researching constantly about Japan in my breaks, those 20-minute breaks between classes. I was constantly researching about Japan, and I have like 5 different types of itineraries planned. One for 1 week, one for 15 days, one for 1 month, one for even a year.
What are the places that you are very excited to visit in Japan?
Tokyo for sure,
Mm-hmm.
and Kyoto because of the very
The
old
temples.
temples.
Mhm.
Yeah, Osaka,
Mm-hmm.
the food. Even though I'm vegetarian.
Oh no,
Yeah.
you can't do this. Why? Okay, fine. What will you do in Japan? You'll just eat white rice
Yeah.
and soy sauce. Oh no.
No,
Maybe
but-
you can add wasabi to everything. You can.
Yeah.
It'll clear your sinuses. All right. Okay, coming back. So you're vegetarian. So you'll go to Osaka, and then what will you eat in Osaka? You won't be able to have any of the...
I'll eat veg takoyaki.
There's no veg takoyaki.
I bet there is.
No.
somewhere.
Takoyaki is octopus. You
Yeah.
can't have a veg octopus.
They'll put paneer in it in India.
Correct. So you'll have to have takoyaki in here. So if you ever go to the Osaka market, all the shops are playing takayaki, takayaki. So for the next 3 days, all we were doing was in our hotel room sitting and singing ta. So it was really funny. All right, so that was Samarth, and we were talking about his 100th episode. Now, this was just part 1. Make sure you stick around for part 2.